Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Wednesday, February 2nd. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Notre Dame game is in 213 days, the game against Michigan in 298 days. It is Groundhog Day, but this is not a day just like yesterday or the day before that, because it is also National Signing Day. That might not mean quite as much as it did in the days before early signing day, stole quite a bit of the spotlight back in December, but it's still a significant one for the Buckeyes. So what can Ohio State fans expect today? My guest today is Buckeye Scoop recruiting analyst Marc Givler. Marc, before we actually get into the news of the day, we should touch on the big news of the day, which is the report that came out last night from Chris Balas at the Wolverine that the planned interview between Jim Harbaugh and the Minnesota Vikings is a mere formality, and that in the quote, Harbaugh plans to sign with the Minnesota Vikings. Now, that story broke just a few minutes before we hit record, so I guess give me your initial thoughts on that report and what it might mean for Michigan and Ohio State.
It just has felt like the last year or two, to be honest, but especially the last few weeks, that Jim Harbaugh is looking to get out of Michigan. I mean, I think he wanted an NFL job last year. I don't think one was available to him, and I think he's been looking for an NFL job here the last several weeks, and I don't think one's been available to him again until this Minnesota thing started popping up here the last couple of days. So. Looks like this has been something Jim Harbaugh's been hoping to do for at least a little bit now, and we'll see what this means if it gets formalized and everything like I would expect it to. Chris Balas is good. If he's reporting this, he's definitely got some good sources telling him this. So, I think the biggest thing for me is where does Michigan go? And I've heard Josh Gaddis, I've heard Mike Hart. I would not fall into that trap. I would be looking at the Matt Campbells of the world. I would be the Matt Rules of the world. I know Dave Aranda was thrown out there. I think that'd be another good one. So I think that's the real question to me is if Jim Harbaugh goes to the NFL, does Michigan fill this thing in-house, which I think would be a mistake, or does Michigan, do a broad national search? Because this will be a great time to go get a coach. It's before spring ball starts. Recruiting's kind of on the back burner after today, and it's a good time to get a new to get someone like a Matt Campbell to listen to you.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question because I think after a good season, the idea of an in-house hire is a little more appealing than it would be coming off of a bad season. And Ohio State did just hire a first-time head coach, and it has worked out pretty darn well under Ryan Day. But that is a high-risk, high-reward thing. Like the Josh Gaddis thing either really works or really doesn't. And there is not a whole lot of in-between. So yeah, that'll be fascinating to watch that play out. One other question that, as soon as the news broke on the Ask the Insiders board, immediately someone said, hey, Insiders, what are you hearing about Will Johnson? And Will Johnson, of course, the five-star cornerback from Michigan, signed with Michigan back in December. He had been looking at Ohio State at one point. There were sort of some rumors that he was seriously considering Ohio State and then ended up going to Michigan. He signed with Michigan in December. He enrolled in with Michigan in January, so of course you'd think, come on, there's no chance at all. Angelique Chingelis, who, like Chris Balas, this is someone who knows the market and is not just going to be making stuff up. She just wrote about how Johnson would have to evaluate the fit with whoever replaced Harbaugh if he did leave. So this is not just I committed to Michigan and I didn't commit to a coach. It sounds like there's at least a little wiggle room there. I don't know where Ohio State ended up in his pecking order before he signed, and if the coaching changes at Ohio State would impact that at all. Is there any reason to think that there's even a small chance that Will Johnson ends up at Ohio State via the transfer portal at some point?
I don't think there's really any reason to think that, but we are in the transfer portal era where this becomes a move like that becomes more feasible than it would have been a few years ago when these guys were really kind of bound to their contracts essentially. And now that's not so much the case. He could certainly be let out. He could, I watched Brew McCoy a few years ago. It was USC to Texas, back to USC or whatever the freaking craziness there was. That was unreal. So in that vein, you can never say never on player movement these days. But there's no reason to believe that Will Johnson would transfer to Ohio State this winter. He doesn't know really any of the defensive coaches at this point. That's a very uncomfortable move to make that only very few human beings, I think, are capable of making to begin with. So, I would be looking at something, if Will Johnson's hell bent on leaving Michigan at some point, I would look, out west at like USC or something. That would make, he's tight with Damani Jackson, and he can go out there and play for Lincoln Riley, and there's, no one in Michigan's ever going to hear from him again at that point. And it just, I think something like that would make a little more sense. I couldn't imagine him ending up at Ohio State this winter if he wanted out.
All right. So the readers asked, you have answered. So we're moving on now. You mentioned the craziness of signing day and the follow-ups to signing day and all that kind of stuff. So let's talk. It is National Signing Day today. What is your favorite crazy signing day story? Maybe from back before when this was really the signing day before National Signing Day. Do you have a good favorite signing day story?
Yeah, I have a few good ones. I don't, I'll go with my favorite. I don't know if it's necessarily the best. It's one I look on very fondly. So Von Bell was obviously a five-star defensive back recruit out of basically Chattanooga, Tennessee. Played across the border there in Georgia. I'm sure all Ohio State fans know Von Bell. Ended up being a great safety for the Buckeyes, and going to be playing in the Super Bowl here coming up. So the thing there was that he was going to go to Tennessee for most of his process. Coaching change. I believe they brought in Butch Jones at that point. I get my Tennessee coaching changes confused, so they've been through so many.
It was the one that ended disastrously, if that helps.
Yes, it was Butch Jones in. And it was maybe too little too late at that point. Ohio State had picked up ground. Alabama was still involved. But it was essentially an Ohio State-Tennessee battle there at the end with Alabama probably running third. But I don't want to say I was on an island. I'm sure there was, one or two other people out there in the market, maybe predicting Ohio State, but the consensus was Tennessee. And I'd kind of been out in front of the Ohio State stuff for a few months. And Bruce Feldman, who is about as good as it gets, I think, in terms of breaking news in college football and accuracy and things like that. He's one of the gold standards, I think. Put out a tweet about an hour before Bell's announcement on the morning of signing day, talking about like Tennessee's getting a good one in Von Bell or something like that, and the message boards are going insane. People are like, "You said he was coming to Ohio State," this, that, and so it's 30, 40 minutes before he's going to take the podium, and I'm like, "Oh my god!" And I hadn't heard anything from anyone at Ohio State. And a lot of times in those situations, you might hear something. Someone at Ohio State may reach out and be like, "Hey, he's going to Tennessee or whatever." That didn't happen. No one at Ohio State was responding. As I'm frantically like, did I get this wrong? Why is Bruce Feldman breaking this? He's not really a recruiting guy, but he's obviously very well connected in college football. What's happening? And I got a text from, if not my best source on Von Bell, definitely top two. And I'm like, what is going on? And he gets back to me about 20 minutes before Von Bell's going to take the podium. He said, "Just hang tight. I don't think Feldman's got this." And I'm like, are you serious? Like, did Feldman just give the wrong, did Feldman get bad info? He's like, "I think he did." I said, just hang tight. And sure enough, Von goes on ESPN and picks Ohio State. And so I had went on the message board because people are like, asking me. I'm at Rivals at this point. They're asking me, what's happening? Why is Feldman putting this out? If Feldman's putting this out, it's done. It's Tennessee. It's just like just like 90% of people were saying it's going to be Tennessee. And I kind of reiterated what my source had told me. I just put on the message board. I just said, just hang tight here. I don't think this is over. And 15 minutes later or so, Von Bell commits to Ohio State. And then there were some great stories there with Von, messing with Urban Meyer on the treadmill and stuff like that. And, but that was a roller coaster there for an hour where you've kind of been one of the few kind of pounding that it's going to be Ohio State. And then for about 30 minutes there, you think you're wrong. And, you never want to be wrong on something like that. You always want to have the right prediction and everything like that. And so you're feeling bad about yourself. You're feeling bad that, you misled people maybe, that your subscribers were, hoping to get this guy. You got their hopes up, whatever. And then sure enough, it flips 180 and it's like, oh my God, what a call. And just so it was one of the most frantic 45 minutes I think I've ever had on a signing day.
Yeah, well, anytime your self-worth and your professional standing depends on the whims of a high school kid, like, yeah, that's a really stable, reliable place to be. My favorite National Signing Day story. This is not one I covered. This is back in the '90s. My all-time favorite, and this is one I've told several times on Buckeye Weekly over the years. Darrell Price. If I said the name Darrell Price, uh, about 15% of you are going, "Oh, the fax machine." And Darrell Price was a running back out of L.A. in signing in February of 1996, and he faxed in his letter of intent to Ohio State and just immediately had like buyer's remorse on do I really want to go to school all the way across the country? And got a call from Ohio State a short time later. The reporting in the LA Times the following day said, quote, "The drugstore clerk had accidentally faxed the wrong side of the two-sided document. So instead of receiving a signed document, Ohio State received a page of recruiting do's and don'ts." So that meant that his fax was not valid because they had not received a signed fax. And he took that as a sign from above that he should actually go to UCLA. And he went to UCLA instead to go play for Bob Toledo. And that worked out okay for Ohio State because they ended up with Niall Diggs in that spot instead of Darrell Price. So it all worked out for everyone. Darrell Price actually ended up coming to Ohio State to play with UCLA in the 1999 season. So he made that trip as a UCLA Bruin. So that was one of my favorite all-time favorite crazy signing day stories. This is not likely going to be quite as crazy a day. The Buckeyes are expecting probably only 2 additions to their class. Probably Hero Kanu is already signed. He just announced late, so that's that is the hay is in the barn on him. Ryan Day has actually already talked about him, so yes, he is officially in. So the 2 expected additions today are Amari Rodgers and Carson Hintzman. I guess let's start with Rodgers. Where does he project, and then how does he fit with the rest of this defensive line class?
Yeah, I guess I should first say I do expect him to sign with Ohio State. I know there was a lot of angst when he announced at the Under Armour game, and I kind of tried to tell people at the time, I was like, I don't think he's going to take all the visits he says he's going to take, and that's turned out that he really hasn't. But so I, kind of doubled down on that. I expect him to sign with Ohio State. Don't expect anything crazy to happen there. But I think he's a versatile guy. I think he's probably going to play more of a strong side end. I know everyone's a Leo these days. I don't know that Amari's a Leo. I think he probably plays the opposite side, puts his hand in the dirt, is more of a strong side end. That's my guess there. But he's also a guy who could play maybe a little inside in the Rushman package if that's going to still be a thing, which I assume it will be. So a lot of versatility up front. Very athletic kid. Banged up a little bit at the beginning of his senior year, which I think hurt him with the rankings, but had a good playoff run. Again, super talented, long kid. Just another one of those. I kind of see some Jalen Holmes there, I guess. I know people love player comparisons. I kind of hate them because it's always hard to do. I think everyone's kind of their own guy, but has got maybe a Jalen Holmes type of body. And if they got Jalen Holmes 2.0, I think everyone would be pretty happy with that.
Something else that I think everyone in the Woody Hayes building today is all very happy about is getting Carson Hintzman. It is a very rare case of stealing a Wisconsin offensive line recruit from the Badgers. That is not an easy thing to do, even though Wisconsin, just like Ohio State, Wisconsin changed their offensive line coach this offseason, so that probably helped in landing him. You got to see him down in San Antonio at the All-American game, and I know he was kind of thrown into a different position because they were real shorthanded in terms of offensive linemen, but what did he look like just as a prospect overall, and where do you think he maybe slots in for the Buckeyes?
Yeah, I think he's going to play guard. I'm sure they'll probably continue to cross-train some of those interior guys and get him some snaps at center, but it was really kind of unfair to him. I mean, it is what it is. He had to do it, but it was kind of unfair, the kind of situation he was put in San Antonio, coming from a triple option offense where he plays guard, and now you're playing center in an All-American game, and you're snapping shotgun, which you've never done before. And so he was doing that a lot in practice, and it wasn't going well. And they were able to get some reinforcements in there because they were low on bodies because guys were testing positive for COVID. They had to hold him out of the game. So he ended up getting to play back at right guard. Again, he's coming from a triple option offense. He's also plays rural Wisconsin. He's not playing top flight competition every week. I think it's going to take him a little bit, but he's really strong. He's really athletic. He plays really hard. I think everything is there. I just think people need to, give this kid 2 or 3 years. He's not going to be a year one guy. He's going to be more of a Pat Elflein. Give him a couple of years. Let his body fill out. Let him learn a position. Let him learn the offense. Get out of that triple option nonsense, and figure things out. So again, coming from triple option offense, this may sound counterintuitive, but I think the bust risk is fairly low here. I think he's got a lot of good physical tools with some versatility in there positionally. That it would surprise me if, again, after, give him 2 years, but after that, he doesn't turn into a decent player for him.
All right, and boy, we've got Pat Elflein comp, Jalen Holmes comp, Jim Harbaugh to the Vikings. This has been a very Minnesota Vikings heavy show today. We probably won't do that too many more days, but I mean, so those are the two guys that I think Ohio State's feeling reasonably comfortable are going to sign on Wednesday. Is there anyone else that's even a remote possibility? I mean, we've been talking about Kristen Miller for the last month, and he's just kind of like this international man of mystery. Any chance of him or anyone else joining the class at the last minute?
Yeah, I mean, I think Kristen Miller's going to Georgia. I've really felt that the whole time. I still feel that way. But he's so good at this. He's so good at keeping people in suspense that you have to keep an eye on it. And if there's going to be a surprise, it's going to be Kristen Miller. Again, I think it's going to be Georgia, but it's not that slam dunk that I can just, Hintzman and Abel are in, don't need to worry about what Miller does. I'm going to be sticking around, making sure I keep my ear to the ground on Kristen Miller, just to make sure, because if anyone's going to shock the world tomorrow, or today, it's going to be him.
Yeah, it should be a fun day. We'll have plenty of coverage at Buckeye Scoop. We will have all that National Signing Day stuff. Also, Tony Gerdev and I are probably going to be recording a fairly substantial Jim Harbaugh podcast at some point, and sort of running through some of the possible replacements for Harbaugh and what this could all mean for Michigan moving forward, and thus for Ohio State moving forward. It is going to be quite an eventful Wednesday, and we'll have plenty of coverage at BuckeyeScoop.com. You can find that coverage on all of our great podcasts. You can find them on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, Overcast, all the great podcast platforms. You can find us there. Just search Buckeye Scoop to find all of those. I know Kevin Noon is going to be looking to release an episode of Big Me Kickoff on Wednesday, so make sure you check that one out, as well as the Buckeye Weekly episode. And Alex Gleitman is probably just about due for an Around the Oval episode. We'll have lots of great podcasts coming out this week. You can also find those on YouTube at youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop. If you are watching there, hit that bell, subscribe to that channel if you are not already. Also, hit that thumbs up. That helps other folks find these shows, which we do genuinely appreciate. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.